sugar. Oh, honey, honey, you are my candy girl, and you got me wanting you.
Welcome back. I'm Kristen from Frosted Bake Shop, and we are going to be working on our Wizard of Oz theme for our cookie class in a box this week. We're going to take a couple minutes to review what's in your kit this week, and then we're going to hop into our cookies. Hope you enjoy. So let's review what's in this week's kit. We're obviously going to have all of our colored icings that you're going to need to follow the lesson video. We have all of our baked cookies. We have 2 colored sugars. You're going to have your yellow for your yellow brick road, and then we're going to use a little bit of red sugar to highlight the bow on top of our shoe. And of course your toothpicks that you're going to use to help smooth out your frosting, work on your details, and we're going to be using them today in a new way to help decorate that yellow brick road. If you're new to cookie decorating, take a minute to jump over to my other video about how to properly set up for cookie decorating. It also includes information about how to cut your decorating bags. Now I'd like to add a quick flooding lesson. The first thing you're going to do is start on the outside of whatever shape you're working on. You're going to pick a point and start piping around the outside of your shape, being careful not to get too close so that it spills out on the outside of your cookie. I'm going to go and turn my cookie sideways just so that you can see it a little bit better. Notice how my piping bag is not touching my cookie. It's just directing where that icing is going to land. Now we're going to fill in the center of our shape. We're going to start by piping another row of icing a little bit thicker, adding more pressure around that outline that we just did. If it doesn't hit that outline, it's not a problem because we can go back and fix it. We're going to do another row or 2 to get the outside filled in. We'll start filling in the inside by making a cross mark, which gives us smaller windows to fill in. Then go back and fill in each of these smaller windows with enough icing that you don't have too much bare cookie still showing. Again, we're going to use our tool to go back and even out our icing and make sure we get rid of any little air bubbles that might be in there. I start with my edges and go around the entire outside of my cookie or my area that I have flooded. I then work on my middle to make sure there's no air bubbles or uneven spots. You can then give your cookie a little shake and even a couple taps against your table to make sure that it's even. And now you're ready to work on your cookie kit. So today's Wizard of Oz set, we're going to start with our poppy flower, which for those fans remember the famous scene where Dorothy falls asleep in the poppy fields. I've taken the time to draw out my design so that you guys have an idea of what we're shooting to do. You have 2 choices. If you have one of these markers that is food safe, you can go ahead and sketch out your design if you would like. Your other option is to use just the tip of your icing bag and sort of drag it along and mark where you would like to do your petals. And your last option is to just freehand it as you go and kind of have the organic design that you end up with. It's totally up to you and what you feel comfortable with. I just wanted to kind of show you what ultimately where my petals are going to be, because we're going to decorate them at a couple different times so that we can see the difference between the petals so that it's just not one big splotch of red on our cookie. So to start, we're gonna start with the 2 opposite facing petals, and we're gonna do the outline, we're gonna flood it in. We're not gonna put as much towards the center of the flower here because we're gonna go back and add black to the center, and I don't want that black to be raised up on top of the red icing. I kind of want it to sit down into it. So I'll kind of show you what I mean, but the first thing we're gonna do is go ahead and outline. And notice how I'm making each petal have a little bit of waviness on the outside. Poppies aren't smooth, they have some ruffling on the edges, so that's the look that we're going for. This larger petal here, ultimately I kind of did 3 wavy lines, and these other ones too, just because that petal is so much bigger, but you can be as creative as you want. So now that we have our outline on that one, we're gonna do our outline on the opposite side. And this one you see we're kind of coming out almost like the top of a heart. And we're gonna follow the other petals line in. So now we have those both outlined. Now we're gonna just do a second row to fill in. And then we're gonna kind of start on the outside and work our way in. Now what we want to do is sort of make it come in to meet where that center of our poppy will be. It's okay if it doesn't come to touch it. You can make the center a little bigger, but remember this is flooding, so it is going to spread a little bit as it settles. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna just make sure that that outside line and then we're gonna do something we haven't quite done before, which is I'm gonna use the toothpick to sort of pull my icing to fill in that blank space. We didn't want a ton of icing and having it flood over. So this is where I'm kind of using my toothpick to fill in that space. Okay, so our first 2 petals are done on our poppy. Since we already have our red out, we're gonna go ahead and work on our shoe. Again, I took a food safe marker. If you have one, some of the early kits, I did send out markers. Or again, just use the tip of your bag. You're not squeezing it and putting actual line of icing, but really you're just kind of using the color to mark where you want your lines to be. But just to sort of demonstrate, you want this side of your bow is going to be here. You're dragging 2 lines in so that they get smaller where they're going to meet the center. You can either do sort of a round shape. This is a little oval. Then again on this side, you're doing the second side of your bow. You're going to start smaller where it meets that circle, come out wider, and I like my bow to be a little bit rounded on the sides. Now this part, we're gonna end up flooding white later. That's the inside of your shoe where your foot would go. And then we're gonna have a sweeping line. You're gonna start at the very tallest point here, and you're sweeping it down to meet where the center of your bow is. Now, for this first step, all we're doing is flooding the actual part of your shoe. We're not touching our bow, and we're not touching that inside part that will be white later. So we're gonna start with that one long sweeping line. Do the back line of your shoe. And we're gonna stop here. We're not gonna go all the way down because we're gonna end up adding a tiny couple lines of black for the heel. I'm gonna start here. Again, not all the way down, and just come across here. Now, when you outline your bow, stay on the outside of whatever line you created, whether that's with your icing tip or whether it was with a marker. And just follow the pointed end of your shoe. And now we're gonna go back and fill in our flood the way we always would. So start with the outsides. And this is obviously a very unique shape. So I'm gonna sort of break up the biggest spots in my grid. And then we're gonna just couple spots that I didn't think there was enough icing. We're gonna go back and just use our toothpick. Make sure that your flood meets your outline. Shake that a little bit so it settles. Okay. We want to give the impression that our road gets bigger. We want to give the impression that our road gets smaller as it goes away from us. So we want to start with this 1 second bump. Right where the corner is, we're gonna sort of imagine where that would meet up here. And again on this side, imagine a straight line would be here. It doesn't have to be perfect. You kind of just wanna make sure that you have a line that you know you're shooting for. So I'm gonna just take my white royal and just do a straight line from dot to dot. If that happens, it's fine. I was moving a little too fast. And then we're gonna just go ahead and flood the entire road. So I'm gonna close in the ends, and then I'm gonna flood as usual. When I use sugars, nonpareils, sprinkles, whatever it is that you're shaking on your cookie, you're going to take, if you have a paper plate, that's great because they're big and flat. But if not, you can use one of your own regular dishes from your kitchen. And I'm gonna just take my yellow sugar and just sort of evenly sprinkle it. And then what you can do is just brush your cookie to make sure that you don't have a lot of sugar still stuck to your cookie. And I go ahead and use my tool to sort of chip away where it's close to the icing, because when you do your color on the outside, you don't want to have to deal with a lot of the sugar that's sort of sticking out the sides. Now, I do have some spots that still look a little whiter than I want. So what I'll do is I'll fold up my plate, dump it in, and redo this. And then we're gonna set that aside to firm up. Okay, so the next cookie that we're gonna work on is our famous Dorothy's blue dress. We're gonna do this in 3 sections. The first is gonna be the bottom part. And then we're gonna go back and add our sleeves, and finally the little straps on the top. So get out your blue icing, cut a tip that is appropriate for flooding, because the only thing we're really going to be using this for today is flooding this cookie as well as flooding the background for your twist. We're going to start with a straight line from right under where the arm is. So we're going to go just straight across. And then we're going to outline straight down, do some of those ruffles at the bottom. Now, for anybody that's seen the movie, you know that she doesn't have a solid blue dress. It sort of has a gingham pattern. We're gonna sort of give the illusion of that by doing stripes in white in both directions. So you're gonna wanna make sure you take your time, try to get your lines nice and straight. So the first thing we're gonna do is start straight down the center. And I'm gonna wanna double these up. And then we're gonna do another set. So there's her blue dress. And we'll come back and do the top. We'll do back the top and the straps in a little bit. Since we have our blue out, we're gonna go ahead and pipe our twister. We're gonna start with a base of blue and add some white and sort of swirl it around so that we have some motion in that background. I'm also going to add some drops of green along the sides just for some interest. You're gonna wanna cut your green bag to be able to just do some small polka dots on the side of your twister. So the first thing we're gonna do, just outline your cookie. first thing, we're going to be adding some swirls of white. They don't have to be perfect. We just want them to sink in. And then I don't want them to look like swirls that are real detailed like that. I want them to just be sort of part of the background. Okay, if you want to add more white, you can do that. But I just want to kind of give the illusion of some motion behind what we'll add in the actual black twister. And now, just for a little pop of color, we're going to add some dots. And then we'll put this one aside to firm up a little bit so that we can add our black twister on top. Now we're gonna take our Yellow Brick Road cookie, and the first thing we're gonna do is actually go back and detail our road. So we've waited a couple steps for this to firm up a little bit, but not much, because we want these to form an indentation, but not be too much that it cracks the whole top. So you're gonna use your toothpick and just, as a straight line, make your bricks. You're not even pushing it all the way down, just enough so that it breaks up the sugar so you can see sort of the brick pattern starting. So we did our lines across. Now we have to go back and do the lines that go the opposite direction. So for the top, we're gonna break that one in half. Now, if you've seen a brick road, brick pattern, you know that you don't put all the lines straight across. So for the first one, because we broke that in half, the next one, we're gonna offset those lines. And then the next one will line up with the top. So you can do the middle. And again, offset. And you kind of continue to do that. And as you get maybe to the bottom half of your cookie, you're gonna wanna make sure that your bricks aren't super huge. So you're gonna make more lines. And that's gonna just give your cookie some texture to look like bricks in your road and not just, you know, all flattened sugar. So the other thing now that we're gonna do is we're gonna add our green flooding on the side. And remember how we took our toothpick and made sure there was no, you know, extra sugar? You can go back and sort of clean it up again, make sure that you don't have any sugar sticking out the sides. That is gonna make it harder for you to flood. But really, you're just gonna follow your outline. So one of the last details that we're gonna add is our red flowers. This should not be crusted over yet. So you're gonna very easily be able to add your flowers and they'll kind of stick, they'll sink in. So I would just place them however you would like, but you wanna kind of not too uniform. And notice how on both sides, I've kind of staggered them. Okay, and there's my yellow brick road. So the last cookie that we actually have to do a flood is our black witch's hat. The black icing is on the firmer side because we are actually using it for some detailing today. So you're gonna wanna work quickly so that even though it's on the thicker side, you're gonna use your toothpick to even it out as much as you can. It's fine if it has a little bit of texture to it. It's supposed to be fabric that will have a little texture to it. So don't panic if it doesn't settle all the way flat, but you wanna move quickly enough that you can do your best to try to get as many of the bumps evened out as you can. You wanna cut this bag on the smaller side just because you want to be able to do your twister, not a huge thick line when you use this bag later. So I'm gonna leave a space. I'm gonna flood this part at the bottom, and then I'm gonna leave a space here to put my band, my green band, and we're gonna do that. So I'm gonna do them at 2 separate times so that I can move quickly on each section. So outline, just following the curve of your hat. Go around a second time. And with this wide, narrow shape, I'm actually gonna just start at one side and work my way down. So the bottom part is done. And now we're gonna go back and do the top of the hat. You can, if you want, flood the entire hat as one big surface and then go back and do your green on top. The only reason I'm not doing that is because you'll have to wait longer for that black to crust over a little bit before you'll be able to do your green nice and even on the top. So this is sort of my way of being able to do that detail a little bit faster in this set. And I shake it a little bit just to help, especially with a little bit of a thicker flood, helps even it out a little bit better for you. So we're gonna set that one aside and we're gonna kind of go back to some of those cookies that we just did some of the first steps on. First cookie we're gonna revisit is our poppy. These look like they've crusted over enough that we can flood in our other two petals. We're gonna do it the exact same way we did the first two. And again, I'm gonna kind of leave the center with no icing because I'm gonna use my toothpick to drag that in towards that center. Shake it a little bit to even out our petals, and we'll set this one aside. Now, one thing that I do want to mention as we're going into the summer months, and if you're doing decorating through those months, is that because of the humidity, your icing may take much longer to crust over, firm up, so that you can do the next step. A trick that you can use, that I use, is if you set them aside but put a small table fan in front of them and let them, not too close, but let them dry in front of that fan, it will help speed up the process for you. It will also help to make sure that your icing dries even. So this is one of those tricks that if you plan on doing a good amount of decorating, especially during these summer months, if you don't have really strong air conditioning, or even if you do have the air conditioning but you're trying to move quickly through a set, a small tableside fan for $10 or $15 is a great investment for your cookie tools. We're gonna do some more decorating with sugar. I opted to not do the entire shoe covered in sugar only because I personally don't like to bite into a cookie that's completely covered with sugar. So I'm opting to just do the bow because I do want it to have a little bit of sparkle. Obviously, if you wanted to do full sugar on your cookie, you could do that. But for this particular set, I just wanted to add a little bit of sparkle and show you how you can do that. So when we do this, we're going to flood just the two sides of our bow in our red, and then we're gonna use that same trick where we sprinkle on our sugar and shake it off. So for this, I do want you to add a good amount of icing along your side. See how much I'm filling that up? Because I do want it to actually kind of sort of come up as high as, if not higher than, your shoe. And you're gonna do that on the other side as well. So right up, almost on top of that line, do your outline, and then build up your icing so that it's nice and puffy. And then making sure that you're not dipping your finger in. Okay. When we do this one, because our icing is fairly fresh from the bottom, we're gonna wait to shake that off, okay? So for now, just, you can leave it. You can use the tip of your toothpick to clear off the center here, but we're gonna wait to go back and do the actual iced part of our cookie. So set that one aside for now. And we're gonna work on just the top of our dress. This is another opportunity for you to sort of mark where your straps are gonna be. You want them a little bit on the wider side, and they're gonna sort of start just a little bit off to the side from that center line. So this little bump here, you're gonna start over here. Your strap is gonna go kind of to the top, the first part of where the shoulder bumps up. So we're gonna go back and fill that part in for straps, but for now, we're just leaving it so that we know where we're flooding our white. Again, a little off to the side, where the shoulder starts to rise. That's gonna be our straps. So now we have to obviously flood in the other parts. When you do this arm part down here, we want it to look a little ruffled almost. So I'm gonna start outlining where this meets there. I'm gonna go straight up. And then I'm gonna just use the tip of my bag to create some ruffling. I do not want to put too much icing because then it'll just start to run out the sides. I want to be able to see that there's a little bit of ruffling there. We're gonna work on the green part of our flower. And really we're just creating a leaf shape, very easy. Just following the curves. We're gonna add our green to our witch's hat. Basically just filling in that space that we left. Let's revisit our shoe. I'm gonna give you a couple behind the scenes tips and tricks. The first is, now that we wanna move on to the next phase and we're gonna add a little bit more sugar, we wanna try to clean up some of that sugar that we left on before. In an ideal world, we would have left this shoe to completely dry before we did that, before we added our bow and added that sugar. The reason is that it would have fallen right off, easy peasy, no problem. But because we're doing this in a class that we're kind of moving from step to step pretty quick, we want to make sure that we don't really have a choice but to sort of move on to the next step and do the best we can. But you can just making sure not to poke into, obviously, the bottom layer. You can go ahead and just sort of rub gently. If you can rub gently to get that excess sugar off of around your bow. The other thing I wanted to kind of tell you, for those of you that are, kind of looking to do this longer term or do more of it, and you're looking for ways that you can improve or tools that would help you. One of the things that you can definitely use to help you in a situation like this, you can invest in a food safe paintbrush. Wilton is a brand that's pretty popular. You can find them in local hobby stores, local craft stores, but it's a nice soft way to remove excess sugar without worrying about poking a hole. So again, if this is a hobby or something that you're gonna pursue long-term, that might be a good investment, is to buy a couple of these food safe paintbrushes. It just gives you a nice soft surface to work on your cookie with. Besides paintbrushing, I use it for a lot of different techniques. Okay, so now that we have the area cleaned off, we're gonna go ahead and add the center. And just like we talked about with the outside of the bow, we really wanna build up our center. We want it to have some texture to it. We wanna see that it's a different surface than the actual shoe. And then we're gonna do the same thing we did before. And again, because I don't wanna spend so much time cleaning this up, I'm really just trying to focus on getting my sugar right on top of that center. Okay? And then I will obviously go back and clean up around that a little bit more. Take out your black icing. First thing we're gonna wanna do is I'm gonna just do sort of some dots. They will start to blend into each other, but by doing dots, it'll add a little bit of texture to that center. And notice see how we kept the shape of that semicircle. The other thing I want to do is just add, and really you're going to just kind of drag the tip to get those lines. Okay, and there's your poppy. Remember that your black is spreading a decent amount, so you don't want to put too much pressure. You want to just do enough pressure that your line comes out. And before you do it on your cookie, you might want to practice to the side to get that motion. But really it's just like a looping motion, starting wider and then coming down at the bottom. Okay, and see how that kind of the pop of green and the white adds just a little bit of dimension and interest to that cookie. So there's your twister. I'm gonna just go ahead and add the heel to my shoe. And we're gonna start with our blue to finish our straps. And just like we filled in on our green for our witch's hat, we're gonna fill in for our dress. So start by closing off the top. Now when I do this, I'm gonna make sure I'm kind of piping and it flows right inside, but I'm gonna wanna make sure my strap comes right up to my dress. So notice I'm just going right almost on top of that bottom part that we already did. Now, just to make this a little bit more interesting, I'm gonna just add a tiny round circle for buttons on each side. And there's our dress. Very last part of our cookie that we're gonna do, and it's up to you. Obviously this looks really cute as it is, but I want to go ahead and add the white. If you are nervous about piping around that red, you certainly don't have to add this, but I'm gonna just kind of fill in right up against and you honestly don't even need to add too much. You don't necessarily want it nice and thick. You really just want it to cover that area so that you know that's not part of the shoe. So I'm gonna kind of just spread out see a little stray piece of sugar in your white, you can just pop it out. Okay, when this is dried, all of it, I will come back and take my toothpick and just clean up around my bow and make sure there's no loose sugar hanging around. But for now, our set is done. Hope you enjoyed this week's class with our Wizard of Oz theme. Next week, stay tuned for our special Father's Day theme. Hope you had a great day today. Thank you.
Sugar.